disagree on so many issues.
He's making it hard for me right now. I was trying to give him credit for some things. He won't even take the credit for things he wants to do. Look, I think that I want to make it clear. If Bernie's a nominee, I will not only support him, I will campaign for him. And I believe the people who support me will do the same thing. Because the existential threat to the United States of America is Donald Trump. It's critical. I would hope that Bernie would do the same thing if I'm the nominee and encourage all of his followers to, in fact, support me as well.
That's his argument. Now, basically, the question that was asked of Joe Biden there was, what are you willing to do in order to get Sanders supporters to back you in this race? Joe Biden's response to that question on what are you willing to do to get Sanders supporters basically was nothing. I'm going to get Bernie Sanders to back me, and hopefully Sanders can get his supporters to back me. But what am I willing to offer? Nothing. I will give words to try to make us seem more conciliatory and all that good stuff. But from the standpoint of actual, tangible, material policy, not so much. Sanders is going to back me in the same way that he backed Clinton, not because he's going to get anything, but because he's terrified of Donald Trump. And hopefully he can con or convince his supporters to go along with this. This is pretty sad. I don't know what's wrong with these people. To some degree, it's as if they have this idea that getting into office is just the job. And in that almost like mobbed up, no work job, that the very fact that they're occupying a space and keeping a Republican out of that space, but in their heads seem to be in and of itself sufficient for them to be successful in that job. The notion that you get that job in order to get certain material things accomplished for the various people in the society that you are representing, that seems to be off the table. How bizarre that is. But let's also be clear on something. To some degree, this is our fault. The left has a philosophical responsibility to be the conscience of this nation. I didn't necessarily ask for this. You didn't necessarily ask for this. Whatever it is that has stuck us in this particular time frame, in this particular planet, on this particular world, for the most part, digs it in us. Meaning whatever our environmental experiences, however we are wired and arranged, we come to the odd distribution where we look out at the world with a certain degree of empathy and with a certain pain in us because we realize what the world can be in comparison to what the world is. We have a philosophical responsibility, since we're stuck with that, to do something about that and act on that and drag the world to a better place. We have abandoned that. And we abandoned that in many respects out of basic fear and cowardice. Meaning when the Democratic Party for the last 30, 40 years have told you you had nowhere else to go, for the most part, lefties agreed. And lefties fell in line. Democrats did one thing after the next, not just disagreeing with the issues of the left, but actually attacking those issues of the left, smearing the left, and basically daring the left to do anything else. Meaning you're going to back us because you're so terrified of Republicans, not because we're going to do anything materially in your interests or based on your policy positions. You're going to do it just because you're terrified. We have abandoned any notion of accountability in our political process. We have abandoned any notion of political force in our political process. Because for the entire 40, 50 years, the Democratic Party have gotten used to the left being the political equivalent of an abused spouse. You're always there. It's a lagging puppy. You're fat. Nobody's going to love you. Yeah, I'm going to not wash my hands and I'm going to make you a sandwich. Yes, I'm going to slap you. Yes, I'm going to sleep with the maid, because at the end of the day, I know you're always going to be there. That's the left. And even now, after 2016, even now, they ask the left, or they tell Biden, what are you going to give to Sanders supporters to get them to vote for you? And his response is nothing. The notion that you would back a party that behaves in this way. You incentivize your own mistreatment. This is kind of my point. Joe Biden can get up there and say that. Hillary Clinton can run that race acting in that way. They do that because for the longest time, you have, for the most part, allowed them to do it. At some point, that needs to stop. At some point, you need to grow a backbone, grow a spine. You need to realize that your political objectives will never be accomplished by acquiescing and going along with people that offer you nothing. It needs to be understood. If nothing was understood in 2020, the one thing that absolutely should be understood is that you are fundamentally different from them. You are not in the same party. Just because you both disagree with Republicans doesn't necessarily mean that they have your policy interests. The Democratic Party line up as a whole against everything that you agree with. All of the ideals, all of the policy positions, all of the things that you agree with that will make this country a better place. The party that is supposed to be the representative of the left, not just lined up against it to disagree, but actively smeared and attacked not just the policies across the board, but also the lefties that were backing those policies. How on earth, in a process like that, do you turn around and back the people who not only don't represent your policies, who not only have attacked your policies, who not only have attacked you, but don't even have the respect to offer you anything for your support? They just have an expectation of support. Right now, we've had 871 people die today on the coronavirus. We have almost 200,000 people that's been infected with that virus. It's going to get worse. And even now, in the midst of everything that's taken place, where Medicare for All would have actually come in handy, especially with people who couldn't afford their tests, people who died because they couldn't necessarily get treatment or didn't have health insurance, which there have been people that have died because they didn't have health insurance or couldn't afford to pay for the treatments. Medicare for All would have at the very least had a system or some aspect of the system that wasn't entirely based on cash, meaning those ventilators that we were working on that were scuttled because of issues of cash. Maybe we would have those ventilators, those vaccines, those masks, those pills, those things that wasn't necessarily profitable. And so we didn't necessarily invest in those things. Maybe if we had a healthcare system that wasn't based entirely on profit, where we were paying twice or 3 times as much as the rest of the world, maybe we would have those things. Maybe we would have been more prepared for this pandemic. And even now, in the midst of all of these people dying, they're estimating that 100,000 people or more are going to die. Joe Biden, when asked about Medicare for All, still says this.
I do have one final question for you, because as you've been seeing, our healthcare system seems to be crumbling underneath this crisis. There is not enough. There's not enough support for the healthcare system. There's not enough support for the American people inside of the healthcare system. Are you now reconsidering your position when it comes to single-payer healthcare?
Single payer will not solve that at all. The thing that is needed is, for example, we have a whole number of hospitals that are being so stretched, including rural hospitals, they're going to need more financing. That doesn't come from a single payer system. That comes from the federal government stepping up and dealing with the concerns that they have, the reimbursement that they're going to get, how they're going to be able to move forward, and how they're going to be able to provide all the needed help.
Basically, Biden's answer is no. When Biden was asked about this once before, Biden said he would even veto Medicare for All if just so happened it was passed by a House and by a Senate. He would veto it in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of a crisis. Joe Biden is still saying, yeah, no, Medicare for All wouldn't solve our issue. Nobody is saying Medicare for All would be a silver bullet to solve the issue. The point is, would Medicare for All have helped? Would it make the situation better? Would it take one of the major bills off of America's backs? The answer is, of course, yes. Biden is still not for it. Which, again, gets to my point. Even now, even in the middle of a pandemic, one of your main policy concerns that would have been a great, tremendous benefit, despite the fact that the overwhelming majority of the Democratic Party is for it, despite the fact that even in states like South Carolina, where Sanders lost by 30 points, the population still comes out in favor of Medicare for All by a majority, strong majority. And you still have the Democratic Party still saying no. Today, this hit a level of ridiculousness that angered me, and it angered me for a few points, because the Democratic Party has continuously had this issue where the problem here is not that people are dying. The problem here is not that people are going bankrupt because they can't afford their medical bills. The problem here is tone. We don't like your tone. And because they didn't like one of Sanders' supporters' tone, essentially the national press secretary for the Bernie Sanders campaign, she makes a point basically about Medicare for All, asking the very basic question of how are all of you people, which is basically what this reporter is asking, how are you on board for paying for the coronavirus and the illness and the treatment associated with it, but you're not on board for paying for the other health care? Meaning, why the coronavirus, but why not cancer? Is it okay for people to die of cancer, but not necessarily the coronavirus? Is it okay for people to die of some kind of other illness that they can't necessarily afford to deal with? Is it okay for them to go without their insulin because they can't afford it? But the coronavirus is the one that you take issue with, where you want to pay for? What's the difference between those things? This led to a lot of fake, phony, selective, cynical outrage by effectively a bunch of Biden supporters and establishment Democrats that attacked her. They attacked her so viciously. Again, attacking her for suggesting that poor people should be able to get health care. They attacked her so much that she ends up trending #1 on Twitter because of this nonsense and the lemmings going after her. Let's be very clear. This has everything to do with her working with Sanders. This has everything to do with them not necessarily being able to make a cohesive argument that is believable and acceptable to the American public about being against Medicare for all. And again, even in these states where Joe Biden won in spades, he still lost the argument regarding Medicare for all. I have to be honest, I don't know how anybody could turn around that's a lefty and vote for one of these people that can vote for the centrist or establishment Democrats. Again, it is not just that they disagree with you. It's not just they hate your guts. It's not that they just are against your policies. They actively line up almost entirely against every last one of those policies, despite the fact that those policies are popular and accepted by the overwhelming majority of the Democratic Party. Why would you back somebody that hates you so? Why would you back somebody that have attacked you so? And why would you back somebody that is against your policy interests? And by backing them will in no way accomplish what you want to do from the standpoint of policy in this country. We have given over all notion of accountability, and it's time that that comes to a stop. Welcome to Late Night Soapbox. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, subscribe. You can always support PayPal, Patreon. This video is not going to be too long. This video annoyed the hell out of me, though, and I wasn't sure if I was going to wait for the morning to do it, but I was up. Real men can't sleep, so real men just scrounge around doing the news. This is Bernie Sanders' press secretary. Very attractive woman, Briahna Joy Gray. She does a great job as Sanders' press secretary. So Kamala Harris puts out a tweet. She says this: testing for the coronavirus and treatment needs to be free, period. Okay, fair enough. I understand that the testing for the coronavirus needs to be free, but what about testing for other diseases? Again, is it okay for people to die from other diseases, but not the coronavirus? That just seems weird to me. Why are you making distinctions between one thing that kills versus something else that may kill? Briahna Joy Gray, this is a good start, but it's okay for people to die from cancer or diabetes because you're poor? Extremely good question. Why are you so okay with people from dying with other illnesses, but coronavirus is something unique and specific? This led to a bunch of just outright ridiculous hysteria. Zerlina Maxwell, the tone of this tweet is mean and disrespectful, especially considering Kamala Harris' mother died from cancer. Now, let's read the tweet again, that she's calling disrespectful and mean. This is a good start, meaning coronavirus testing and treatment being free, but is it really okay to die from cancer and diabetes because you're poor? And from, why is it okay to pay for the testing for the coronavirus as a society and as a community, but cancer, you're on your own? That's basically the question. Zerlina Maxwell is either brain dead, incompetent, or a political actor who's taken this absurd, intentional, and willful misreading of what was written in order to create a hysteria just to create an argument for people to attack Briahna. This is absurd. Whether or not Kamala Harris' mom died of cancer or not is irrelevant. Are you telling me that because some political hack has a family member that died of a particular illness that everybody else is shit out of luck? That's nonsense. You have people dying of cancer almost, if I'm not mistaken, is the number 2 cause of death in this country, or at the very least, one of the major reasons that people go bankrupt. It is absolutely in line with the argument for Medicare for All that if we are in the middle of a pandemic and all of these people are arguing that you should pay for testing and you should pay for treatment, again, the question is apt. Why is it okay for individuals to have to deal with cancer and AIDS and some of these other viruses and diseases, but the coronavirus gets a special placement in regards to what the state should take care of or what we as a society should take care of? If indeed you can make the argument that we need to take care of the coronavirus as a society, why is cancer and some of these other diseases that kill more than the coronavirus each year, why do they get a pass? It's just a weird thing to make this argument that, no, we don't need Medicare for all, but we should pay for the coronavirus specifically. What about the flu? What about the cold? What about pneumonia? I guess I'm asking, why is the coronavirus getting this special capsule of treatment? Is it entirely because this is something that the entire country is focused on, and all of these political actors like Kamala Harris and some of these other establishment Democrats just want to make points off of saying this stuff, missing the logic or missing the mental defect in making the argument that, yes, we should pay for the coronavirus, but people who got cancer, fuck them. All of this is manufactured hysteria. That's all it is. And there are some politicos that will jump in. There are some useful idiots that will jump in. And there are some people who are just too stupid to realize they're being had. Here's the other one. Bakari Sellers, a toxic piece of trash. This is toxic. She's part of the problem. Again, she's toxic because she's asking, why should poor people have to die because they don't have health care? That's toxic. That's toxic to him. It's not the fact that poor people are dying of health care that's the issue. It's the fact that somebody's saying something about it. I don't like her tone because she's, backing these poor people dying from health care. This is her response. Cancer is the number 2 cause of death in America. It's also the illness most likely to cause medical bankruptcies. It is precisely because so many people have suffered losses from cancer that we should be fighting for universal health care coverage. Tens of thousands of people die per year because we don't have health care. But establishment Democrats have found the problem. The problem is tone and making that point that all of those people are dying and going bankrupt for not having health care. Here's somebody else threatening her career. Attention, younger people hoping to pursue a career in political communications. Comms work requires thinking, strategy, and foresight, and always uplifting the candidate. Trolling someone who isn't even an opponent, it's not really a thing, and it's damaging to the campaign. Don't do this one. Look at what they're saying. Attention, young people who want to pursue a career. Basically, her going after Kamala Harris for not supporting Medicare for All, her going after Joe Biden for not supporting Medicare for All, her pointing out that poor people shouldn't die because they have some kind of medical illness and don't have the money to pay to get that health care, her pointing that out is dangerous to her career because she's pointing out how the Democratic Party over the last 40, 50 years have been in office pushing policies that have allowed this particular situation to run amok. Bringing that up, young people who are in comms, you might not be able to get a job in one of these other political campaigns later on. Just be aware of that. All of this, again, all of these Democrats attacking you and someone that believes in similar things that you do about people being able to get health care unattached from whether or not they have massive amounts of cash in the bank, they decide that that's the thing that they need to attack her on in the middle of a pandemic. This is your Democratic Party. How do you turn around and support a party that acts and behaves in this way? Attacking a policy position that would save tens of thousands of lives. Why on earth could you find yourself and wrap yourself into a knot to break yourself into this pretzel to back the party that has pushed through the problems that we have right now and not just not doing anything about it, but actively working against people who are trying to change it? At some point, the left has to come to their senses, grow a spine, grow the fuck up, and have some level of a political accountability in dealing with people who you are trying to work with to get political items accomplished. There are some people who you can't work with. There are some people that just need to lose. There are others that you may be able to work with to get certain political concessions. But you got to choose those things. And you need to make a choice on who you support and why you support that person. And there will be people who you just won't support. And there will be people who you don't support because they are against your policy and political interests, meaning you can't proceed if they are getting what they want. My point here is that the Democratic Party in its entirety has lined up against all of your policy interests and not just attacked the policy itself, but actually smeared the individuals that were pushing for those policies. Again, policies that was decidedly to the left. The party as a whole lined up against it and attacked those policies. Bernie Sanders has done there are three problems resulting from Bernie Sanders' weakness, all of which will have disastrous consequences in regards to the race that's coming up. One, his weakness invites himself to be stepped on, meaning his inability to be strong in going after Biden, be strong in making his particular point, his particular case, tying the Democratic Party to the policies that we are living through right now, tying the Democratic Party to the reason that Trump is in that office. His inability to do that, for the most part, invites himself to be taken advantage of again. Also, because he wasn't willing to be strong in going after the Democratic Party and Joe Biden, he loses all notion of leverage. Meaning he's not using his support as leverage in order to get political concessions. And because he's not using that support as leverage to get political concessions, the third problem becomes that he is not able to entice his supporters to vote for the Democrat. Because ultimately, he's not willing to use his leverage to get political concessions to any degree that would allow those people to justify voting for whatever that Democrat is. All of those things mean that outside of something taking place regarding the coronavirus, Joe Biden is going to get bullied in the next race. And the people who Sanders or who Biden or the Democratic Party is going to need to get won't be there. And again, a lot of this has to do with the Democratic Party effectively accepting the left as you have nowhere else to go. So you're going to vote for us, not because of anything we're going to do for you. We're not even going to back you. We're going to actively attack you. And even if you get the opportunity where you may win, we're going to go to a brokered convention in order to make sure that everybody loses. That's the party. That's the party. My recommendation is that you don't support people who are actively working against your interests. You got to start somewhere in regards to growing a spine, in regards to having some level of accountability. And for so long, we have gone without having any level of accountability and just folding into whatever the Democratic Party, whatever random hat that they put up, that now we're at the level where they have no respect for the left. They have no respect for the notion of give and take and compromise in regards to politics. And because we have let them ride for so long, they don't believe accountability is part of the process. That needs to stop. Like, share, subscribe. Thanks all.